Alabama in Bud Walton Arena, which was rocking, by the way. Like, I'm hearing reports that Bud Walton Arena might be back, and that building sounded like quintessential vintage Bud Walton Arena in the second half as Arkansas made that run. But Alabama found a way. They got a win, 85-81 at Arkansas. Who is your number one team as of today? Is it Alabama? Can Alabama jump Auburn and Duke? Are we gonna get a number one versus number two matchup on Saturday night when Auburn has to go to Tuscaloosa?
See, I don't like the people that automatically, because you lose, they automatically drop you. I don't understand that, because there might be a big gap. No, it's not me. I'm actually completely the opposite. I don't drop people because I think there's a gap between Auburn and Duke, for instance. But looking at Alabama's resume, which I did, and looking at Auburn's resume, and part of it is obviously they're in the SEC, but part of it is I thought they both played really, really difficult non-conference schedules that were better than Duke's. Now, Duke beat Auburn, but it was at Cameron, right? Other than that, they beat Arizona on the road, and they beat Louisville on the road. Other than that, they haven't beaten any other surefire tournament teams. They've beaten Pitt, Carolina, SMU. None of those are locked tournament teams right now. You look at what Auburn's beaten. I mean, at home, Purdue, Missouri, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Iowa State, and Memphis on a neutral. At Houston, at Ole Miss, Alabama's beaten Illinois, Creighton at home, Houston on a neutral, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Mississippi State on the road, and they've got other wins against fringe tournament teams. I think it's clear that, to me, it's Auburn and Alabama. They should be 1-2. I would probably still go with Auburn, but I think it's close. I'll have them at 1-2, and I will have Duke at 3. I still want you to throw it to me after we're done with this conversation of the biggest winner off that Duke game, because it was not Clemson.
Who was? Just go now. Who was it?
North Carolina. They play Clemson Monday. And now that becomes a resume game in which Carolina won today. They held on, right? Like, it was not pretty against Pittsburgh. But now they've got a big-time resume win where they go into Clemson and Littlejohn on a short turnaround for Clemson, where they're feeling great about themselves, right? They just beat Duke. And who knows? Carolina could go in there and get that win. And if they do, they're firmly in the field.
In the field? Okay.
In the field.
No. Okay. Relax. Jeff Goodman, bracketologist. Okay.
For the time being. I'm not saying they're staying in, but
they're firmly in the mix. They're firmly in the mix. Mike, I'm going to phrase it to you like this. Instead of not talking about rankings, whatever it is, who is the best team in college basketball right now?
I mean, who are you taking? Who are you taking is the biggest thing, right? Like I think the question should be like, if you're betting your house, who are you betting it on? Are you betting it on Alabama? Are you betting it on Auburn? Are you betting it on Duke?
See, here's my thing with Alabama is we can look at their resume for the whole entire year, but Chris Youngblood came back almost 8-9 games into the season. And I'm pretty sure they're 13-1 with him. Like, this has been a different team, and they were already good, but they hit another gear when he was, wasn't injured anymore and was in the lineup. And so that's what I'm looking at with Alabama. And that's the reason why, when you go down the line, this is a Final Four team last year that is leaps and bounds better defensively this year. And still as effective offensively, and has so much more lineup optionality than they had last year. And so I would bet on Alabama, and I get that may be recency bias given what's happened today, but I do think Duke is probably the most complete team. I know I mentioned that last week. Auburn, there's some stuff there, like losing on your home floor in that fashion today, just kind of, that'll always kind of give me some pause, even though I know Ole Miss went into Alabama about a month ago, wherever it was, and got a win on their home floor. But I've just, as the season's gone on, I've become more and more, I guess, a fan of Alabama and the way they've put this together. Because you got to look at Alabama this way, right? Their program and what Nate Oates has built. You get Chris Youngblood, who comes from South Florida, and Cliff Amori, who comes from Rutgers. And both of those guys, in addition to a few other transfers they got, obviously, but both of those guys had a certain way that they played. And honestly, it didn't really match the way that Alabama plays. Because Alabama, we saw last year, you are allergic to the mid-range. You shoot threes and you shoot shots around the rim. And you play with pace. You don't really have, you don't throw it in. You don't play 4 out, 1 in and play through a post, a post player. So you go out and get Cliff Amuri, who was back to the basket at Rutgers. They threw it into him nonstop. And then you get Chris Youngblood, who, took, I think, 65 mid-range pull-up twos last year. You know how many he's taken this year? 2. You know how many back to the basket post touches Cliff Amuri's gotten this year? Pretty much 0. And those guys come in, and you can look at it whatever you want as the fit of those guys, but they just assimilate. That's just what they do. And to me, that's a sign of a true program. And that's why they have me buying in more and more as it goes on, because I like their effort. I like their body language. I said, the optionality with their lineups. They're effective on both ends now. You couldn't really say that last year. So, I think those 3 are at the top. I mean, Houston's, you can say they're knocking on the door, but those 3 I think are
it's
cut above
those
the rest.
3. Yeah, it's those 3 that are 1, 2.
I mean, Rob might have Louisville there, Mike. You know that. Rob might have Louisville in that tier as well. Who knows? Look at him right now. I mean, he's so excited talking about Louisville that he froze.